are Palestinians, and roughly 78% are Jewish. And yet the thing that characterizes the relationship between those two communities more than anything else is separation and segregation. And it's especially true among children. There are no laws in Israel the way there were in the south of the United States that kept black and white kids separate. Jewish kids are legally able to go to an Arab school, and Arab kids are legally able to go to a Jewish school, but they simply don't. Part of that is because of geography. There are many places in Israel where there are Arab towns and villages where every single person living there is Arab, and Jewish towns where everybody is Jewish. But even in mixed cities, such as Jerusalem, Haifa, Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Akko, Upper Nazareth, even in mixed cities, the Arab student will go to his or her Arabic-speaking, Arab-only school, and the Jewish student to his Hebrew-speaking, Jewish-only school. And we believe that if kids from the age of 0 through 18 never meet someone from the other community, and then if you're Jewish, you serve 2 or 3 years in the army, by the time you're an adult, it's much, much harder to break down those walls of separation. We know that this conflict is much more complex than just going to school together, but one of the things that helps perpetuate this conflict is this separation. So we believe, before we founded Hand in Hand, that if we could create a model of integrated bilingual Hebrew-Arabic schooling, we could make a dent in this separation and be a model that hopefully would be replicated across Israel. When we started, my Arab co-founder and myself, the most common reaction we got from people that we spoke to about this idea was it would be impossible, it could never work. People said Jewish and Arab parents would never send their children to a school together because there's too much history of separation, stereotypes, fear, conflict. A few people said it's an idea that probably won't work, but you should try it anyway. And we decided to be sort of persistent and maybe a little bit naive and started. As Debbie mentioned, we started with one class of kindergartners in Jerusalem, 25 students in 1998, and one class of first graders in the Galilee in northern Israel, about 32 students. So we had slightly over 50 students. And the next year, those first graders moved into second grade and the kindergartners moved into first grade. And we grew upward there's an expression in Hebrew, a school that's called a Beit Sefer Tzomeach, which means a flowering school, where you start very small and grow per grade. In 2003, we opened our third school, and it's in the Israeli Arab town of Kfar Kara. It's the only place in Israel that we know of where Jewish students are going into an Arab community to go to school. Since then, we opened a fourth school in Jaffa, which is part of Tel Aviv, a fifth school a third school in Wadi Ara, a fourth school in Jaffa, a fifth school in Haifa, and our sixth school is next to the town of Kfar Saba, which is northeast of Tel Aviv. October 7th affected us directly. Our schools were not under missile fire. They're away from the border. But some of you may have heard of the hostage who was later murdered, Hirsch Goldberg Pollen. His first cousin is a student in our school in Jerusalem. In Haifa, the grandmother of a student of our school was murdered on her kibbutz Be'eri, on October 7th. One of our graduates of our Jerusalem school, high school, who was serving in Miluim in the Israeli reserves, was killed a year ago in Gaza. And dozens of our Arab families, especially our school in Jaffa, have relatives in Gaza. Often they're relatives that they've never met because Gaza has been off limits for so many years from Israel, but relatives that they were in touch with. And many of those relatives have been killed or hurt or their houses destroyed. So this affects Hand in Hand. There's not even 1 degree of separation from how it impacts Hand in Hand. And in fact, when the schools reopened several weeks after October 7th, one of the first things we did is we didn't take for granted that everybody would come together and have a great time. Everybody would be talking and holding hands and hugging each other. We knew there was going to be a lot of challenges, especially among the adults. And so our executive director in Israel told all of our school principals, if you need to bring in extra school counselors and psychologists and group facilitators, do that, whatever you need, and we'll cover the cost. And among the parents, we had many parents meetings. In fact, one of my young colleagues who has 3 children in our Jerusalem school said that between October and December, she went to more meetings with parents than she'd done in the past 3 years. And some of those meetings were very tense. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that's part of the culture of Hand in Hand is that everybody has a chance to speak and everybody needs to be listened to. So when we have a meeting with parents, we sit in big circles, and before anybody else speaks a second time, everybody else has a chance to speak. And there's no crosstalk at the beginning. And the goal is for you to tell your story and your feelings, and not for someone else to say, no, you're wrong, but to listen and understand that and then to express themselves. And after everybody's had a chance to speak, there can be a bit of crosstalk. And so we did that in one of these parents' meetings. And then there was a Jewish parent sitting across the circle from her Arab friend, who was another mom in the school. And she said to her, after October 7th, I was waiting for your phone call and it didn't come. And the Arab mother said, but I would have assumed that you know that I condemn Hamas and I condemn the attacks. But in that instant, she understood she needed to have called her friend, and they got up and they hugged each other. So one parent took for granted, well, we're friends, I don't need to speak with her. But she realized this person's in pain, maybe knew people who were in the army, knew people who were in harm's way. But in the end, it created this bond. When the grandmother of our student in Haifa was killed, the parents, an active parent, there were some Arab parents who wanted to come and express condolences, but they didn't know if they would be welcomed in this Jewish home for the Shiva, for the mourning. So they called up this man's wife, and she said, of course you're welcome. And 30 Arab parents came to sit with them for their Shiva. You don't see that very many places in Israel. You know, what happens in wartime is that people retreat into their tribal corners. And there was a lot of fear. The Arab parents told their Jewish kids, many of them, if you're going out in public, speak Hebrew, don't speak Arabic. They were worried that they might be attacked by extremists. That didn't really happen, but there was fear. In our case, we didn't allow these two groups in our communities, Arabs and Jews, to retreat to their corners. We pushed them to come together because our model is really, really important. We were worried this new school year that started in September that we would lose parents again, and that registration would fall off. All of our new classes are full. All of our new preschool, first grade, and kindergarten classes are full. And I like to say that there are probably some, especially on the Jewish side, some parents who in more peaceful times would consider enrolling their children in hand-in-hand schools, but maybe are afraid and aren't. But there's also other parents who, because of this depressing situation in Israel, are looking for something that can give them some hope for a more peaceful future. Hirsch Goldberg Pollen, there's an article, and I can share the link with you or link with Debbie afterwards. There was a lot of hope that he would survive. And there was a chance that the Israeli army would rescue him, and Hamas murdered him at the last minute. At his funeral, basically half of our school attended his funeral, Jews and Arabs. You don't see many places where there is a funeral for an Arab or a Jew or someone from the other community is attending. Israel now has 9+ million citizens, probably close to 2 million children or people or Israelis who are under the age of 18. And if you're a pessimist, you can say that our 2050 school children is just a drop in the bucket. It's a very small percentage of the 1.5 to 2 million school children. If you're a cautious optimist like I am, you can say most people told us that this model would never succeed, that Jews and Arabs would never come to school together. We started with 50 kids and we've gone up about 40 times that time. We now have a waiting list on the Jewish and Arab side. Our schools are not large enough physically to enroll all of the children that are asking to register. We have plans to open more schools. There are still communities and regions in Israel where Jews and Arabs live in close proximity to one another, but there's no model of an integrated school. Some of you may have heard of the city of Akko, north of Haifa. There are two twin cities near Ben Gurion Airport, Ramla and Lud. Upper Nazareth, which I mentioned, which now has a name, it's called Nofa Galil, Galilee Panorama. Those are three communities that are mixed communities. Jews and Arabs live there. Each of those towns are maybe 1/3 Arab, 2/3 Jewish. And yet the only models are either Arab schools or Jewish schools. Then there are regions in the country, the Western Galilee near the city of Nahariya in northern Israel, we're now working with a preschool that's housed on a kibbutz Efron, in which a group of parents came together and said they want to integrate their kids from the two communities. And they've come to us saying, can you help us open a school? So we're looking at as many places as possible to grow this model. We will never have 1 million school children in hand, but we could have 5,000, 10,000 school children. And some of you may have heard of the anthropologist Margaret Mead. And she said, never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. In fact, that's the only thing that ever has changed the world. So we believe that we're making an impact well beyond our numbers. We have a robust alumni program. So the Jerusalem is the only school so far that goes through high school. In Haifa, we're at middle school and we're working our way up to 9th through 12th grade. But we have a robust alumni program that includes graduates of our high school, but also kids who finish in elementary school and go on to their Arab or Jewish schools that want to stay connected. We have about 1,000 graduates altogether, ranging in age from 18 to their late 20s. Almost all of them go on to higher education at the Israeli universities or colleges. And they're involved both socially, but also in all kinds of programs. We started a program at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, a small, modest program that's growing, in which each year we have a cohort of 20 students, half Arab and half Jewish. The universities in Israel are one of the first places where Jews and Arabs come together, but they come together in which they're on the same campus physically, maybe sitting together in the same classroom, but very rarely interact with one another. And one of our graduates from our school in Jerusalem was at one of the alumni programs. She was a student or is a student at Hebrew University. And she said, I wish there was a hand-in-hand in my university. And that kind of stimulated us to look into developing this program. So we have 20 students each year, half Arab, half Jewish, and only a minority are hand-in-hand graduates on purpose because we want to reach out to a wider group. They do very, very intense leadership development. They have to volunteer as pairs, an Arab and a Jew, as role models. They go into hospitals and schools to do volunteer work, and they're visible role models that Jews and Arabs can work together. And then in the second semester each year at the university, they have to organize one or more programs that aim to bring Jewish and Arab students together. This is the third year at Hebrew University. The war has made it more difficult because many Jewish university students are called up into the reserves. We want to replicate it next academic year at Haifa University and eventually at other universities. In 5 of our 6 schools, we have preschools. So we have a wonderful preschool program. And in fact, in Haifa, the program started with 18 toddlers who were age 2. And by the time our preschoolers reach the age where they're starting to learn how to read and write in kindergarten and first grade, they're already speaking Hebrew and Arabic fluently. Our kids, the program is 100% bilingual. In each of the younger grades, we have one Arab and one Jewish teacher who stick to their own languages, Hebrew and Arabic. The curriculum is completely bilingual. And then starting in 3rd grade, all of our students learn English. So if you walked into a junior high classroom and for sure into a high school classroom, these kids are basically trilingual, Hebrew, Arabic, and English. One of the things we find, though, that Hebrew is still the dominant language in Israel. The Jewish parents, for the most part, don't speak Arabic. The Arab parents, for the most part, do speak Hebrew. So when the parents are meeting together, when teachers are meeting together, they're speaking in Hebrew, but still the Jewish students are pretty fluent in both languages, and we believe that language is a wonderful entryway into someone else's culture. I speak fluent Hebrew and a little bit of Arabic, but I also speak Spanish. I know that when I travel to Latin America and I speak with someone in Spanish, it's a sign of respect. It's a way to learn about different cultures. We have 3 religions represented in our schools. We have Jews. The majority of the Arabs are Muslim, of Muslim background, with a range of religiosity. Most are not really observant, but during Ramadan, they may be fasting. But we also have Christian Arabs in 5 of our 6 schools. And we had to create a calendar that recognized and respected all of the different holidays while still keeping a 5-day school week. And so one of the first compromises we made, or that was on the part of the Christian Arab students, that they go to school on Sunday. Our school week is Sunday through Thursday. But we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Hanukkah and Christmas and Easter and Ramadan and Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, and all of those holidays are celebrated. And the holidays are really our our entryway into learning about the different cultures. In Israeli public schools, you can teach about religion. There's not really a separation of religion and state in Israel. So we use those holidays as a wonderful opportunity for the kids to learn about Islam, Christianity, and Judaism without being sort of a theological school. We have the same number of school days as any other school in Israel. And I want to end with this before we show a couple of videos. Our schools are part of the public system in Israel. We knew from the very beginning that we would not be able to sustain a fully private school network. Israel does not have a lot of private schools the way the United States does. We didn't want to rule out families that were poor, that had lower economic means to send their kids to school. We also wanted to get the government to kind of step into this. And, we can raise $10, $15 million a year, but the government can raise 10 to 15 billion shekels a year, and they can help sponsor schools. But we also knew that we wanted to work with the professionals in the Israeli Ministry of Education and not with the politicians, because governments rise and fall in Israel. We've had, I think, 10 different ministers of education and more than 10 prime ministers since Hand in Hand was founded. And we found that the professionals in the government are the people that really make most of the decisions. And about 40% of our budget is covered by the Ministry of Education that pays most of our teachers' salaries. 40% is paid by international philanthropy in the US and Canada and Europe and Israel, and 20% parents' fees. Most of the ministers of education, regardless of whether they're from left-wing or right-wing parties, have visited our schools. The last minister of education who visited was Naftali Bennett. He then later became prime minister. Before the current Netanyahu government, there was a coalition from right to left, and he was prime minister. But earlier than that, when he was under Netanyahu as prime minister, he was the minister of education. And he's a very right-wing man, but a very decent human being. And he came to our school and was very, very impressed and genuinely interested in our model. He wears a kippah. He's an Orthodox man. He wouldn't send his children, if they were young now, to our school because he wouldn't want a religious school, an Orthodox school. But he said, what you're doing is important, and I wish you luck. Earlier, we had a man named Yossi Sarid, who was from the Meretz party. But I'll give you another example of how our project crosses a lot of partisan lines. A man named Gidon Sa'ar, who is now part of the Netanyahu coalition, he's in the security cabinet. He was Minister of Education, and he came to visit our school with two members of Knesset. One is the former president of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, who comes from the Likud party. But before he was president, he was Speaker of the Knesset, Speaker of the Parliament, and an Arab member of Knesset named Ahmad Tibi, whose daughter attended our school. And the joke was, if you could get these three politicians together amicably, then you could start 20 schools. That's no challenge, because these politicians didn't necessarily agree on things. While Gidon Sa'ar was in a meeting with the teachers, he had an aide with him. He sent his aide out, and 20 minutes later, the aide came back and whispered in his ear, and he said, I just got you an additional teaching position. So this is a man who grew up on, a right-wing politician who, probably, I maybe wouldn't see eye to eye on a lot of politics, but he believed in what we were doing and got us extra support. And that's really important to us, because the government can easily fund 20 more schools if they want. It's very challenging now, partly because people are distracted by the war and rebuilding the economy, and partly because often they're afraid of taking on new things. So the government isn't yet raising the banner and funding us with millions and millions of shekels to open new schools. It's still a work and a challenge for us to do that. But where we have tremendous support is among local government. The mayors of Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Haifa have all visited our schools, and they endorse our schools. And the buildings that we have are all municipal buildings that we have not had to pay for. I have a couple of short videos to show. Maybe I'll show one, and then if it's okay with you, Debbie, we can open up to some questions, and I can elaborate on that, because I want to be sure people have time to ask. And Debbie Lambert, if you could show one of those videos. There's no sound though.
Hello, welcome to our school. Hi, my name is Monia. I'm from Sahnin, and I'm in 6th grade, and I'm 11 years old.
Hi, I'm Tamar. I live in Lavon. I'm in 5th grade. We are very sorry that you couldn't come to see our school.
So we wanted to show you around and tell you lots of stuff about our school. Our school was made in 1998 in September 1st. It was made because they wanted that Jews and Christians and Muslims to learn together and not to be scared in the future to talk to anybody that you don't know. And I'm Muslim, and if I talk to Tamar, it's normal because it doesn't matter if she's Jewish, if she's Christian, or she's even Muslim, because I see her as a person.
In our school, we have the PBL, Project-Based Learning. Now, my friends are going to show you other projects that kids are doing this year.
Hello, my name is Ibrahim. I live in Sakhnin. I am in 5th grade. Today I'm going to tell you about our greenhouse. In our greenhouse, we grow food and vegetables.
Hi, my name is Nama. I'm in 5th grade and I live in Tuval. So today I'm gonna tell you about a recent project that we are doing. We're trying to save energy and this is one of our materials for it to save the energy. שלום, קוראים לי לוטם. אני בן 9, אני בכיתה ד' ואני גר בכמון. השנה הפרויקט שלנו למעשה הייתה יצירת בובות. השאלה הפוריה שלנו הייתה איך אנחנו יכולים להעמיק את הקשרים החברתיים בכיתה, ולדעתי זה פרויקט מאוד שווה.
Hello, my name is Shefa. I live in Pinaton. I'm in 3rd grade. This is one of the projects. It's a calendar of all the holidays of the Jews, of the Muslims, and of the Christians. These are here the big kids in the class chose. I chose my sister as my hero because she has a disease in her muscles. And she climbs and she helps other people that also have problems in their body. She helps me too, and I love her, and that's why I chose her.
Hi, my name is Manara, and I'm the principal of the school. So in our school, we work a lot through projects, and I think this is a great platform to encourage kids to work around a shared objective despite the differences. In each project, we actually encourage kids to ask questions that are connected to their surroundings, to environment, to political issues. And by doing that, we seek to make impact on our surrounding, not only by being an Arab Jewish school, but also by being a school that is here to make a difference.
Thank you for coming on the tour with us.
We will be very happy if you will come to see us soon. Bye!
Bye!
So I wanted to maybe, if possible, take a couple of questions and then answer them, and we can show a second video as well. And I know that if you could put questions in the chat. I also am going to put in the chat now our, it's disabled, I think. I'm not sure. I wanted to put our website in the chat so that you could, here we go.
I enabled it now.
Thank you. I put our website in the chat if anybody wants to afterwards to get more information about it.
Can you put it in again, please?
Sure. I think it's there. Oh, I'm gonna have to do it to everybody. Sorry about that. Let me do everybody here. There we go. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. So, I mean, maybe it's not such a large group. You could ask orally questions as opposed to putting them in the chat if anybody wants to. I'm not sure, Debbie, if you want to do it that way.
I just have a comment that I'd like to make because you talked about the importance of learning each other's language and how that's a respectful, a way to show respect. I'm a retired pediatrician. And in my clinic, all of a sudden, I started getting patients from Arabic-speaking families. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Rosetta Stone and I learned how to introduce myself in Arabic. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple of things that I was amazed to find. One was that people who said they spoke no English, all of a sudden, when they saw me struggling to say, you know, hello in Arabic, all of a sudden they didn't feel funny saying hello in English. Right. The other thing that was poignant to me was one of them said to me, "You're Jewish, right?" And my first impression was to say, "Who wants to know and why?" But I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "So you were born in Israel?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, that's a shame because if you'd been born in Israel, half the words in Hebrew are like the words in Arabic."
Huh.
And I thought that was so sweet that they were doing this reaching out. And so that ability to share language is really important. And looking at what you're doing with these kids is just amazing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ella. That's lovely. I think that I found that too, that just even saying, in Arabic, the word for Arabic is marhaba or salam. But I know that in Israel, unfortunately, Israel is surrounded by Arabic-speaking people, some of whom we have peace treaties with, Egypt and Jordan, and it's possible that the new government in Syria will be more forthcoming and less like the former regime. And 22% of Israeli citizens are Palestinians whose first language is Arabic. And yet, unfortunately, Jews don't learn Arabic. And so we're trying to create a model that says, here are many words. I mean, the word for lots and lots of words that come from both languages. I mean, Arabic sort of developed out of Hebrew and Aramaic. And it just opens a lot of doors.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions? So maybe I can show a second video. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is of our we'll see which one comes up. We have one. This is our youngest school, our newest school.
Hello, welcome to our school, Yad B'Yad.
My name is 9 months old. I live in Tira and I'm 8 years old.
Hello, my name is Yuval. I'm 8 years old. I live in Moshav Hagol.
Me and Yuval
We're in the same class. I am Jewish and Nai is Arabic, and I like to learn from my friends who are different from me.
I like art, especially drawing.
I like math because it's a lot of science and it's really interesting. This is our classroom.
In our school, we celebrate Jewish and Arabic holidays.
Sometimes in the holidays, we teach the younger kids. It's fun and I feel like older.
This is where we do our morning circle. It's special at our school that we both Arabic and Jewish learn together.
I really like to learn Arabic because it's interesting and it's like a new language and I like to discover it.
Being part of an integrated bilingual school gives our students the opportunity to see the other as a partner and not as an enemy. In our school, we put emphasis on critical thinking. We allow our students to ask questions, explore in order to find themselves. Being part of this family fills me with joy, fills me with responsibility. I love coming here every morning to join these kids, to learn from them, to be part of this social revolution in order to make a better future.
So that young man, the very handsome principal of our school, his name is Mohammed Kunduz. He is an Arab. He grew up in Jaffa. Jaffa is part of Tel Aviv. It's the ancient city. Tel Aviv was founded by people who had been living in Jaffa in 1909. He's someone who actually has relatives in Jaffa. He told a wonderful story that his father, I think his grandfather lived in Jaffa in 1947 during the War of Independence. All of his grandfather's siblings left and went to Gaza as refugees. But his grandfather said, I'm staying here because it's my home, and I'm staying also because of my Jewish neighbors. He was close with his Jewish neighbors. And I think Muhammad kind of follows in the footsteps of his grandfather. He has a really interesting backstory. He went to school at Brandeis in Waltham, near where some of you live. There's a late philanthropist, a man named Alan Slifka, who's a graduate of Brandeis, and he endowed a perpetual scholarship that every 2 years brings one Arab and one Jew from Israel for a full 4-year scholarship, including airfare back to Israel. They have to be accepted, of course. And even though Muhammad grew up in Israel. He grew up in Jaffa, in an Arab community, and he gets to Brandeis and he said, "I've never seen so many Jews in my life," which is really funny coming, from Israel. And at Brandeis, he somehow came there thinking they had a filmmaking major, and they didn't. But they built a film program around him, and there were 7 students who studied film and graduated. And he made his film about the other Arab students that were at the university. And when he showed it in his senior year, 400 people came to watch it. So he really was he got a warm welcome from a school, even though it's about half Jewish. He is not only a filmmaker, you might have seen at the beginning of the movie, he was playing an instrument called the oud. The oud is an Arabic instrument similar to the Greek bouzouki. It's a string instrument that doesn't have any frets. It's a very difficult instrument to play, the way a violin has no frets. He's a virtuoso oud player, and he welcomes kids every morning playing the oud and saying in Hebrew, Boker Tov, good morning, in Arabic, Sabach al-Khair. He's also a songwriter, and he's been an actor in both Hebrew and Arabic theater, and we're really lucky to have him as our principal. He doesn't make $1 million a year, and we hope that he'll stay there. The kids love him. It's our youngest school. It's housed on a college campus called Beit Berel, which is just on the eastern side of the Israeli city of Kfar Saba, which is now, it used to be a very separate geographic area, but now it's perpetual city from Tel Aviv all the way to Kfar Saba. And the Arab students come from 2 Arab small towns called Tira and Taibe. And the Jews come from Kfar Saba and some of the Moshavim and Kibbutzim in the area. It's only in elementary, it's preschool through 6th grade. We would like at some point to see if we can build a junior high school there if there's enough of a demand, but it's challenging. Are there any more questions? Because I can elaborate a lot on, but I want to be sure. I see that Barbara has a question.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, do the kids see each other after school or in the weekends? Or the reason I'm asking this is because when I was in Haifa probably 10 years ago, we went to, I think it was a school or a community center where there was a lot of emphasis put on how wonderful it is that these kids are together and learning together. But it was also, we're told that they're not allowed to or they're discouraged from socializing outside of this community center. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is there anything like that? Yeah.
So first of all, in all of our schools, kids are going constantly to sleepovers and play dates and birthday parties. Every place where we have a school, we have a paid community organizer, a full-time staff person whose goal is to create programs outside of the school, primarily for parents and other adults. And Haifa, I'm not sure where you went in Haifa. It might have been the Beta Geffen Community Center. It wouldn't have been our school because we really encourage, first of all, it just happens naturally. These kids are friends with one another and the parents become friends. The school in Haifa, I was in Israel on October 7th, but I was also in Israel in May of that year, April, May of 2023. And I spent some time in Haifa, and we had dinner with a large group of our Haifa parents. And the way they described their friendship is the way I describe how I'm part of my synagogue community. We belong to a pretty robust Reconstructionist shul here in Portland with about 500 family members. And most of our friends are from that synagogue. And we do things socially and at the synagogue and outside the synagogue. And these parents have created this community around their Jewish Arab school. They become friends through their kids. And one of the things we hear from the parents is, there's one Arab parent who said, well, I sent my kid to this school because I was choosing the best education for my child, but I myself have been transformed by this experience. That she was an Arab parent. She herself had never really met a lot of Jews or socialized with Jews. She speaks Hebrew and she would go shopping and meet Jews, but never on a friendly, personal level. So that happens a lot. It's easier in our schools that are in urban settings, Haifa, Jerusalem, and Jaffa, because they're in the same city and they're used to, but it also happens in our Galilee school where the Arabs go to their home villages and the Jews to their home villages. They're still close together, but we also don't leave it for chance. We organize programs for the families. And as I mentioned earlier, when the parents come together, there's a lot of friendly arguing because they don't, one of the things that people say to us, well, aren't you just preaching to the converted? They already believe in peace. And I say, if you came to some of the dialogue work with the parents, you'd see there's some serious arguing, but they can argue as friends and go out and have beer or coffee together afterwards. This is the fourth war between Hamas and Israel that we've gone through. This is 1,000 times worse, but in previous encounters, when parents come together, they're talking about what's going on. And I'll give you a common refrain. So a Jewish parent might say, well, of course, we don't want innocent Palestinians to be killed, but we have to respond. They're throwing missiles at us. And the Arab parents will say, of course, we don't want missiles flying at you, but Israel shouldn't have a siege on Gaza. So I kind of like that because I see that these are parents who have a lot of baggage and they need to work things out, and they don't solve that problem. They can disagree, but they can also find common ground. But many years before I founded Hand in Hand in the 1980s, I led a weekly dialogue session between Arab and Jewish students at Hebrew University. And there were a lot of dialogue sessions, but the problem with them was they were very superficial and they weren't based on any common interest. We would invite people to come and have hummus together and falafel and talk, and then they'd often go home and never come to the next meeting. If you have common interests, such as the education of your children, you can build solidarity and partnership because you have this common interest that you want your kids to get a good education, and Hand in Hand is providing good education. So we're not going to blow things up because we want our kids to be happy and stay there. It doesn't mean that every single parent is friendly with a Jewish parent, Arab parent, and Jewish parent, but for the most part, there's a lot more interaction than just dropping their kids off at school and picking them up at the end of the day. I see Debbie Lempert has a question.
So you've had graduates from the high school. Do you hear, and maybe from the lower schools, do you hear back from them as adults how this education has affected them and how it's changed, how it's made a change in their life? I mean, they don't know anything different, but how it might have affected change in their adult life and their relationship.
Yeah, we have anecdotal evidence. I mean, what we have not yet done, which we want to do, is a more serious piece of research where we look at our graduates 1 year out, 2 years out, 5 years out, really follow them and see what they're doing, and maybe have some comparison with people who didn't go to Hand in Hand schools. But we do know through our graduates who come to us that they self-report that they feel that Hand in Hand gave them a base of values that they're taking out into the wider world at the university and in their careers. And even among Jewish students, when they go into the army, the army is no army is a democratic institution. You go there, you follow orders from your officers. But we have Jewish graduates who are drafted who talk about how when they're not on duty, they have serious discussions with their classmates. And there's one graduate, this is just an example of many, a young man named Jamie Einstein, who recently got married. He said that he would have a lot of friendly argument with his classmates saying, we're going to be in the West Bank and not all Palestinians are our enemy. I went to school with Palestinians. They're not all out to kill us. Some are and some aren't. And we have to be humane. There's also another thing that happens, which I think is reflected later on. Arabs are not drafted in Israel and Jews are. And Arabs in Israel tend to view the Israeli army in negative terms. This is the army that's fighting their cousins in Gaza or occupying their people in the West Bank. Jews, while not all of them relish the idea of spending 2 or 3 years in the army, they say, this is something I have to do. We still need an army. There's still people who want to kill us. We need to defend ourselves. The Arabs in our schools also see the army through the eyes of their high school classmates who are about to get drafted and say, well, this friend of mine is going to have to give up 2 or 3 years of his or her life and put themselves in harm's way and have a difficult time and not earn a lot of money. And the Jews see the army, they see their classmates, and they say, well, I'm going into the army, and the Palestinians are not my enemy. Hamas is my enemy. Terrorists are my enemy. The Palestinians are a people. So that happens a lot. And I think that's something that Hand in Hand gives to our students that they do take with them. We do know that a lot of our parents who've met through their kids getting invited to a birthday party or whatever remain friends sometimes longer than the kids' friendships, because kids at a young age, one year they might have one friend group, and the next year they might have another friend group. As you probably know, those of you who have had kids and some grandkids. We have parents in Jerusalem, and I know this, a group of parents who became friends in 1998 and 99 when we started the schools, and they're still having dinners together and going on trips together and things like that. Not everyone, but many of them. Maybe I'll show one. Oh, wait, I see that Karen has a question. Sorry.
Yeah. This question was partially answered by the second video, but I noticed the children have what I would call mainstream attire on in the schools.
Right.
Are there any kinds of dress codes for what can be worn at the schools and what can't be worn?
Right. So now in Israel, in most schools, the school uniform is a t-shirt, any color, with the emblem of the school. So you might not have seen that, but our kids wear different colored t-shirts, and they have the emblem of a school, which is our new logo, which is quite lovely. And it says it's written in Hebrew and Arabic. In our elementary schools, kids, I mean, the Jewish and Arab kids, if you walk into a classroom, you cannot tell who's Jewish and who's Arab until you know their name, because they're wearing shorts when it's in the summer and the spring. And, you know, kids wear t-shirts. Even in the winter, they don't like to wear coats. As you know, you see kids in Boston now going to school without a coat on. They just like the cumbersome of having this coat. In our high school, you know, Arabs tend to be a bit more modest. So we do not have kids wearing midriffs or wearing short shorts, but they do wear shorts. When you see mothers, a sizable number of our Muslim Arab mothers will be wearing a hijab, but not all of them. And I've learned that a hijab is very different. Orthodox Jewish women will cover their head for religious reasons. The hijab, it can also be a cultural sign and not necessarily a religious sign. So most, you know, our schools are secular. We don't have prayer in our schools. We have a few boys who wear kippot. There are a few Muslim boys who will go into a room where there's some rugs and they can pray. During Ramadan, the majority of our Muslim kids are fasting, but they may never go to a mosque, and their parents may drink alcohol at home. So it's the way, you know, Jews in conservative and reform synagogues will fast on Yom Kippur, but will drive to the synagogue on Yom Kippur, or will, you know, not necessarily keep kosher for Pesach, but might. So there's a variation, but the kids dress really similarly in Western kind of attire. There are Muslims, there's this, you know, Orthodox, there's a movement in Israel called the Islamic movement that are very Orthodox Muslims. People who adhere to that kind of religious orientation are not sending kids to our schools. They don't want their kids to, they were very insular, and then we have, you know, Orthodox Jews tend to not send their kids to non-Orthodox schools. They send their kids to secular schools. But, you know, the majority of Israeli Jews are not Orthodox, although in Jerusalem, the majority of the Jewish population is now Orthodox, modern to Hasidic Orthodox. Maybe I can show this one last film. This last film was made by former Israeli President Reuven Rivlin. We call him Ruby Rivlin. He grew up in the Likud party, grew up, you know, his grandfather, I think he's got as many generations in Jerusalem. He is not a fan of Netanyahu. He's a very democratic person. And before he even became president, when he was Speaker of the Knesset, he became a big fan of Hand in Hand. And this film was made during COVID, but he made this video for us. And if we could show that.
Shalom. Hello. ומרחבה. מרחבה לשותפים של עמותת יד ביד. האווירה הציבורית בישראל בימים אלה מדגישה כל כך את חשיבות פעילותה של עמותת יד ביד. זו המשמשת כמרכז לחינוך יהודי ערבי בישראל, המקימה ומפעילה מסגרות חינוך דו-לשוניות בכל רחבי הארץ. אחרי שנת בחירות קשה, שהבליטה את המחלוקת והשסעים בין השבטים והקבוצות שמרכיבים את החברה הישראלית, כל פעילות שמבקשת לעורר שותפות ולטפח היכרות וכבוד הדדיים, היא כל כך מבורכת וכל כך חיונית. היא אשכרה שליחות. מי שגדל בבית שדיברו בו בשתי השפות, וכמי שאביו ידע וסיפר לו סיפורים רבים בערבית, אני יודע היטב מה כוחה של שפה. זה כוח לפתוח צוהר לתרבותו של האחר, כוח לקרב, כוח לחבר. והרי כולנו יודעים כמה אנחנו זקוקים לקירוב לבבות, כמה, לחיבורים, לאמון, ובעיקר בימים אלה. כולי תקווה שפעילות העמותה תמשיך ותשגשג. בוגרי מסגרות יד ביד, יהודים וערבים, גדלים להיות מובילי שינוי והשפעה בחברה הישראלית. הם שגרירי אמת של ההבנה. ההבנה שלא נגזר עלינו לחיות יחד, אלא נועדנו לחיות יחד. אז תודה לכם. תודה לכם על פועלכם החשוב כל כך. וברכת בריאות ושלום שלוחה לכם כולכם מירושלים.
One of the nicest things I think that he said there, and I'll answer it, is that Jews and Arabs are not sentenced to live together, but they're meant to live together. And it's a really powerful statement that this is not, a lot of people say, well, the Jews aren't going anywhere, the Arabs aren't going anywhere. And I say it's wonderful that there are Jews and Arabs living together. It's not that it's a necessary evil. It's a wonderful thing. And I see that Jeanette.
There's some other questions. Judy Meyer has been waiting patiently, and a few other people. So
Sure. You want to call on them, Debbie? You can call on them, sure.
Yeah. I think you're unmuted, Judith.
Okay. I was wondering, is there some level of intermarriage among the graduates?
Not that I know of. I mean, first of all, it's very difficult in Israel. I mean, I personally would aspire to an Israeli society that respects whatever people choose, same-sex marriage, intermarriage, interfaith marriage, secular marriage. The Jewish community and the Arab community in Israel as a whole, there's a lot of pressure to marry, even among Arabs, to a Christian to marry a Christian and a Muslim to marry a Muslim. We have kids in our school whose parents are mixed, an Arab and a Jewish couple, and they wanted a school that would be accepting, and our schools are very accepting of them. But we know of no, I think that there are probably, there's some dating going on in our high school, but remember our high school in Jerusalem is very small, and most of the kids have known each other since first grade, and they often say it would be like dating my brother or dating my sister. As far as I know, those kids who've gotten married have married people from their own communities. But I remember there was we brought some teenagers to do a speaking tour, and they were asked kind of that question, what goes on, and the girl said, well, we don't tell our parents everything that we do. So, I'm sure there's a share of kids who are drinking alcohol or smoking marijuana in Israel, which is pretty common now in Israel. But I don't think there's any intermarriage as far as I know. And then I know Jeanette, you had a question. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Jeanette?
Yes. I have a comment first. I was very impressed with the fluency of the young children, the fluency in English. Is that an average, or were the better ones picked for the video?
So I think that they chose kids who knew English, but I think quite a few of our kids in that second video I showed of the kids who were showing them the classroom, the Arab girl, it's really funny. I didn't know where her English came from. Her mother is our director of community programs. And she said she did not learn English from me. She started getting interested in English in first grade and was self-taught. She started watching videos and getting books. And the Jewish girl in that video, I think her parents are English speakers at home. But we have a sizable number of kids who just become quite fluent once they start learning. Israeli young people tend to learn English pretty well. Their videos, they're watching television, and they need it for university. But I
Very
think
nice.
it shows kids who really were quite fluent to be in the
Now,
videos.
the question I have in higher education, like middle school and high school, courses like math, science, in what language are they taught?
They're taught sometimes in both. It depends on the teacher. In middle school and high school, if the teacher is an Arabic speaker, he or she will teach in that language. By that time, they're doing what we call immersion. In the younger grades, we have the two teachers, but by the time they get to middle school, they're fluent enough in both language. They can spend a whole day or a whole part of the day in one language and a part of the day in the other language.
Okay.
Hebrew is still dominant when they're having conversations with one another. Hebrew is still the dominant language.
Yeah. Excellent work. You're doing excellent work. I'm
Thank
very
you so
impressed.
much.
I'm
Thank
very
you.
impressed.
Thank you.
Ellen Greenspan has some some
Yes.
questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I was wondering, are there requirements to have your child placed in the school? Because the
No.
children all seem quite smart.
Okay. So we try to keep an even number of Jewish and Arab children and a gender balance between boys and girls. But then beyond that, it's first come, first serve. And I think there's a bit of self-selection because it's the parents who are choosing, because our schools start at preschool, kindergarten, or first grade. Later on, every year, there's a smattering of kids who come in older grades. And sometimes it's the kids who are deciding and the parents are enabling. But for the most part, it's parents who are learning about hand in hand. They do in January and February, this is when we do our open houses. New prospective parents are invited to see the schools, but it's first come, first serve. So we have a range of learning abilities, but I think that the parents are much more engaged, and I think that helps the kids learn. Parents visit the classroom and volunteer, but we have a share of kids who have dyslexia, or a share of kids who need extra tutoring in language or math or whatever, and then our share of kids who just jump ahead and can do advanced math in 5th grade or 6th grade. Our schools have won some prizes. Our Galilee school in the 21-22 school year received the prize of best school in the Northern District, chosen out of 200 schools, looking at academics and level of satisfaction. Our school in Jerusalem has won prizes in science and math in middle school. So they're pretty good academically. But then, we have a range. We have kids who go off to medical school, because medical school and law school are undergraduate degrees in Israel, and you apply directly into your field at universities in Israel. And then we have kids who go to some of the colleges, which are less selective than the universities in Israel.
The children have to meet a certain criteria every year in order to go on, or is there a curriculum that is tested?
So there are fewer standardized tests in Israel in general than there are in the United States, but they do this nationwide testing in 3rd, 5th, and 7th grade that look at literacy, reading and writing, and math. They're not done for each school. They're a standardized test that everybody does. And our schools have always been above average, despite the fact that we don't have any criteria for coming in. But there's a range. It doesn't mean that every child in the class is above average. But I think that one of the reasons is we have a smaller class size than most schools. Our average class size is 25 students, and the average in other schools is 30 to 32. We have the 2 teachers in the class in the younger grades, so there's a better ratio. There's more attention given. We also have done a lot of research, or we read a lot of research that shows that when kids are learning bilingually, when they're learning 2 languages, it can help them in other subjects. It just helps them develop cognitively. I mean, that in Europe, there are places where students are speaking 3 languages. In Holland, they're speaking German, English, and Dutch. Or in Denmark, they're speaking English, Danish, and Swedish. In America, not so much. Most Americans are not bilingual. So we found that helps them. And we have some resources in the school that, because of our fundraising, that other schools might not have. So we're a little bit better resourced, which I think helps. And then parents are more involved. And there's a lot of research that shows that when parents are more engaged especially in elementary school, up to, let's say, 4th grade. After that, the kids don't really want their parents around. There's a direct correlation between parents' involvement and levels of achievement in the younger grades, because the parents are motivating the kids and the kids see that the parents are interested. And you see that sometimes in schools, especially inner city schools in the United States, poor communities, parents are kind of checked out sometimes. Not all of our students, one of our biggest challenges, and you might understand this a little bit, it is always harder for us to recruit Jewish parents than it is Arab parents. The Arabs are the minority in Israel, and they need their most important vehicle for their kids to have upward mobility and success in a society where they're the minority is education. So they view coming to our schools as a step up educationally. They want their kids to learn Hebrew at a younger age. They want them to get better skills. Jews in Israel don't need Arabic to survive. They need English for university. Arabs need Hebrew. We think Jews in Israel should be learning Arabic, but most Jewish Israelis don't speak Arabic. So we have to work harder to recruit the parents and encourage them to enroll their kids. And we're generally successful, but sometimes we have a bigger waiting list on the Arab side, and then we're accepting every Jewish student who's applied on the Jewish side.
Thank you.
My understanding of, at least, I don't know at your schools, that in high school, they take a standardized test to tell them you don't apply to colleges the way you do here in the United States. So they have to go through the same testing, in other words, to prove that they have the aptitude, and they're told what subjects they're eligible to major in college and stuff like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, in high school, there's a series of exams starting in 10th grade, 10th through 12th grade, called Bagrut. Bagrut, the word Bagrut means maturity in Israel, but there are matriculation exams. Much more, like here kids take the SAT, which is it's a 3-hour, 4-hour test one time, usually in juniors. In Israel, every subject, there's a standardized test, a 3-hour test. English, Hebrew language, Bible, Tanakh, math, physics, biology, chemistry. It's really rigid. There's a lot of people who say we have to reform that system. It doesn't determine what they can apply for, but generally, if you want to go to medical school, you need a certain grade in your Bagrut. And if you're under that grade, it's harder. But it's not just a test, it's also your grades in high school, and the grades are looked at. And then there are some essays and things like that. But our kids, almost all of our graduates from our high school in Jerusalem have gone off to the Israeli colleges and universities, and they've done well in the Bagrut. One of the tests, standardized tests, is in civics. It's the roughly translated as social studies, but civics, you learn about how the Israeli government works. You learn about democracy, you learn about comparative government. What does it mean having a jury trial or a trial with judges in the British system or the French system or the Israeli system? And our kids, our schools have done way above the average, the national average in civics, because a lot of what we talk about is democracy and coexistence, and there's a real emphasis on that subject. You go right into, unless you're going to study history, you have to apply to study psychology. You have to apply to study social work. You have to apply to study math and engineering and medical school. Medical school is a 6-year program for Jews after the army, for Arabs right after high school. And many of our students are now lawyers and doctors in the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math fields.
The other question I have is, if any of us would go to Israel, is it possible to set up to go and visit the schools, or do you have to be on a tour group or under something like, or can it be done on an individual basis
It's definitely, I always want to end by extending an open invitation for you to visit. We need a little bit of lead time, and it's sometimes hard if it's just one person, but it's definitely possible. And I think 5 of our 6 schools are more readily open to hosting. And we're all over the country. So I think Jerusalem is often the easiest school because we have more staff there. I mean, you can't just come there on the own if the staff kind of taking you around to see things, but and other things is that we have graduates who are often very willing to meet with people for coffee or a meal, or the kids are used to visitors. They sort of don't bat an eye. Sometimes they want to talk with you. Sometimes visitors come and will bring, usually we want to, if they want to bring a gift, we say, bring it to the teachers. The teachers are the ones that are working hard. You know, I always bring chocolate to the teacher's room, the teacher's lounge. And they always, you know, I bring, you know, these candies, or you don't have to do that, of course. But if you are going to Israel, please, you can be in touch with me and I can make a connection. You could do that. And Debbie, I know your son is there. I'm not sure where he lives with his family, but we probably would have a school very close by. And the school week is Sunday through Thursday, barring, you know, holidays. And our schools go to the end of June too. End of June, the holiday, and they start at the beginning of September. So July, but in July, most of our preschools are still running. And sometimes people come in July in the summer and they're able to visit one of our preschools, which are, you know, the kids there are not speaking English very much, but they can see the kids and they can see the teachers and talk with people and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I see Fern has her hand up.
Anybody else? Fern?
No. Sorry about that. I've been listening, but I wanted to know, are the arts an important part of their education?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the school, but there are art teachers in all of our schools.
And music.
Music, it depends. Our school where you saw the second video with the man with a beard, he's a musician and he's created a music room, and there's an orchestra there. Where some of the kids, you know, are learning at home as well as some of the kids learning there, and they try to do an interesting mix of Eastern and Western music. So the oud is an Arabic instrument. There's an instrument called a qanun, which looks like an auto harp, but it's a very interesting instrument. In Jerusalem, we have a wonderful choral director. It was really, really wonderful, and we have some videos. I went. In May, when I came with some of our board members, we walked in and it was elementary school, and they were going to sing, and I thought, well, it's going to be a little mediocre. And these kids were phenomenal. They sang in Arabic and Hebrew, and then they sang John Lennon's of the Beatles song Imagine in English. And then they did a translation in Hebrew, and they were outstanding. And it's really a testament to this teacher who's really gotten them to love singing, to get over their embarrassment. Even kids who are a little bit off key have managed to do really well. And they were accompanied by some of the student musicians. And these were 4th and 5th graders. I don't know about our Galilee school. And I can't tell you about, so I know that there is music and art in all the schools, but on different levels. The principal of our high school in Jerusalem, our 7th through 12th grade, junior high and high school, is a Jewish woman named Efrat Meir. And she was the art teacher there for many years. She's an artist herself, and she's incorporated the arts a lot, even though the school has to be sort of focused on academics. After that, she was the community organizer, and then she came back as the principal. So yeah, we do have the arts. I think that, you know, you saw that our Galilee school uses what's called project-based learning, which is a way, some of you may know about this, where you pick a theme and you'll build the curriculum around that theme. The theme can be the environment, you know, protecting the environment, and you'll learn math and science and history about the environment. The kids will go out and look at things in the environment. In Jaffa, they do that, but they also do something called place-based learning, where they are outside the school a lot, out in the community, and they learn history of Jaffa, history of Israel, history of cultures by, you know, even in the winter, they can go outside and do that. The Jerusalem school is a little bit more traditional, just sort of more frontal learning, especially in the high school.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions? So I think it's still in the chat. If you scroll, I'll put it in again one more time.
I'm just looking to see if there's anything.
I'm going to put in the chat again the website.
I don't see anything.
So now it's there. But it's there as the last thing. But the website is very, very easy to, it's hand in hand, k12.org. So HANDIN, HAND, K12, We have lots of videos there, a lot of information. Some of the videos are longer ones. And if you want to also sign up to be on our email list, you can do that there. And then you can get all of our emails. And we do some webinars several times a year. We're going to hopefully do one. My guess is it's going to be in March. We have teachers, we've had some of our principals, some parents, and they're usually hour long, and they're talking about their experiences.
I also noted that there were at least 2 students, I don't know if they were alumni, they came to the United States.
Last year, it was in May, last May, we had our board meeting in New York and a board dinner, and they were sponsored by the Jewish Community Center of Washington, D.C. They did an Israel Film Festival there, and they came and spoke. There was an Israeli television miniseries called Madrasa, which is the word for school in Arabic, and it was written. There's a pretty famous author, Israeli Arab author, he was a parent at our school in Jerusalem, and now he teaches at Emerson College in Boston. He teaches creative writing, and he created several television series on Israeli television. This one was about a quote unquote fictitious integrated high school of Jews and Arabs, roughly based on Hand in Hand. And it was kind of funny. It was a satire because he's a satirist. And they came to speak about their school and also watch the video. And they were wonderful spokespersons, 2 young women in their 20s, one who graduated at our school in Jerusalem and one who only went through 6th grade, but stayed connected to Hand in Hand. They're both very active in our alumni group. And they spoke actually a little bit less about Hand in Hand and more about their personal stories, overcoming diversity. The Arab young woman is a dentist. She went to dental school, I think, in Hungary and came back as a dentist. And she works in a dental clinic run by an Orthodox Jewish man who'd never really met Arabs, but was very open to the idea and has really kind of mentored her. She did her residency, and then she now is a full-fledged dentist there. And she talked about her background. And then the Jewish young woman is studying dance therapy. She's been a dancer her whole life and wants to do dance therapy, and she comes to the regular meetings. And we don't know when we'll have other alumni come. We want to try to bring alumni because everybody says they want to hear from young people more than anything else, which I think is important. I mean, I think I'm a good speaker, but hearing from students who graduated through Hand in Hand and could talk about their stories is even more powerful, I think.
Yeah, of course. The other thing is, I don't know how many people here are aware that I didn't know about this until I read it online. And I know PBS, some of the PBS stations picked out that Hand in Hand won a T4 award.
Yes, for diversity. Several awards. I mean, one was this international diversity award that was given by Canada, and another one about pluralism and diversity. That was our Jerusalem school in both cases. We had a piece on NPR a year ago in December of 2023, and also an article in the New York Times, a really wonderful article. But I also, Debbie, I want to share with you afterwards by email the article written by the cousin of the hostage, Hersh Goldberg Pollen. It was written when he was still a hostage and still alive. And it's about her and her daughter's experience in the school. And it's really, really powerful. And I don't know if you can share that with the people who registered, who came on the call today.
I can. I have them. Most of them are in a group that I created, right. And individually I can put them in the group, and I can share. If you share it with me, I can share it with everybody.
Wonderful. That would be great. That would be great.
Okay.
And for those of you who live in Boston, I come to Boston regularly. My sister lived there for many years, and we have donors in Boston, and the Jewish Federation of Boston, what's the CJP, the Council of Jewish Philanthropies, made a gift for our school in Haifa, because Haifa was traditionally a sister city of Boston. It was a one-time gift, but I think it was a $50,000 gift. It was a major gift, and they've had delegations come. And the Jewish Community Relations Council of Boston has brought state representatives, state elected officials to visit our school. My niece used to be the chief of staff of a state senator from the Waltham Lexington Concord area, and he visited Hand in Hand years ago. So there's a connection in Boston, and yes,
We'll have to have you over for Shabbat dinner then.
love that. Would love that. Yes, for sure.
Boston
Yeah,
area.
yeah.
Um,
What,
Thank you.
yeah, I was just, another question, another in my mind that left. Anyway, the, if anybody has any other questions, you can either, we can just ask me to unmute. If not, you know, I think, this gives us some great insight into things, the good things that are happening in Israel. There's a lot more of this going on. Unfortunately, it doesn't get near the attention that it should in the mainstream media, and definitely not on social media. So if one thing you can do is let other people know. You know, it's like the old commercial. There was an old commercial years ago about a hair product, and it started out, I told 2 people and they told 2 people and they told 4 people, and before you know, the screen all fills up with all these different people. Okay, and that's what we're hoping to have happen here, so that people understand that not everyone in Israel is looking. While October 7th has made this more challenging, as Lee told us, that not every Arab wants to kill every Jew, and vice versa. If you hear about certain extremist settlers, Jewish settlers that do things, it's a much, we tend to extrapolate and think it's the majority, when in the reality, I liken the people who are the extremists to the bullies of the world, and the bullies of the world are a minority, but we seem to be being ruled by the bullies.
Right.
And what Hand in Hand Schools is doing is helping to push back at that. And we need to push back at that at all levels. And education is the best way to start. In my
Thank you.
mind.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
it takes time. We're not born hating each other. Children learn hate.
Right. Exactly. Thank you, Debbie. That's really wonderful. It's exactly true.
Thank you. If nobody has any other questions, I don't know, we can, whoops, there we go. I wanted to thank everybody for attending tonight. And when you go on the site, naturally, you know, Lee spoke about the schools and how they're funded and everything. So take a look at the website and definitely share what you've learned here. And when I get the information from Lee, I will share it with all of you so that you have something tangible as well. And again, thank you for attending, and I hope everybody found it interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just want to add one thing. I want to say that, you know, the women at Hand in Hand are really the ones who are the leading things much more. I mean, the women have the easiest time making bonds, breaking down barriers. And, you know, the more that women are in charge of things in this world, the better this world will be. I think that's my feeling. So I'm not just saying that because you're the conservative women of the Northeast. I'm saying that just, I feel that way.
The Southeast.
Southeast.
Ellen, do you have anything else you would?
No, I'd just like to thank Lee Gordon for coming in and giving such an interesting program. And I'd like to thank everybody who came. Good to see you. Good to see some old friends and new friends here. And stay tuned for more information from Region about our retreat. And I'll see my board at the board meeting that's coming up at the beginning of February.
Thank you all so much. It was lovely meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Lee.
Round of applause.
Thank you.
Everybody stay healthy, safe, and warm.
Thank
Amen.
you.
Yes. Lila Tov.
Thank
Lila
you.
Tov.
Great job.